Strange Histories, Episode 3, The Eternal Empire. In 476 AD, the Roman Empire collapsed. It was the end of the ancient world. Everything that followed, the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, the modern world you live in today, happened because Rome fell. But what if it didn't? What if the empire held and never stopped conquering? Let's explore one possible world that could have been. At its peak, Rome was the most powerful civilization the ancient world had ever produced. It stretched from the Scottish Highlands to the sands of Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. One empire, one law, one language, 60 million people living under the eagle of Rome. It built roads so well engineered that some are still in use today. It invented concrete. It gave the Western world its alphabet, its calendar, its legal system, and the very concept of a republic. And then it started to crack. Not from one blow. Empires rarely die that way. Rome bled out slowly. Barbarian pressure from the north. Economic collapse from within. Emperors who lasted months before being replaced or murdered. A military stretched across too many borders, defending too many frontiers. In 476 AD, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the last Roman emperor, a teenage boy who was emperor in title only, with the real power having already collapsed around him. The last emperor was deposed. Rome fell. The Dark Ages began. That's the history you know. In the alternate timeline, the Legion holds. Odoacer's forces meet unexpected resistance just outside Rome. A Roman general, competent, ruthless, and loyal in a way that has become dangerously rare, rallies the remaining imperial forces and breaks the advance. It is not a glorious victory. It is a brutal, grinding defensive action that cost the empire enormously. But the boy emperor survives. Rome survives. And Rome has always known how to turn survival into something more. The reforms come fast because they have to. The general understands what historians have understood too late. Rome didn't fall because of the barbarians outside. It fell because of what was rotting inside. Corruption, a slave economy that couldn't adapt, a military that had lost its sense of purpose. In the alternate timeline, someone fixes it in time. The barbarian tribes pressing at the borders are absorbed, not as conquerors, but as soldiers. Romans in everything but birth. New blood, old structure. The borders stabilize. Rome endures. 5 centuries pass. Historically, the year 1000 AD is the height of the medieval period, feudal kingdoms fragmenting Europe. The Catholic Church as the continent's dominant power, Vikings raiding coastlines, the Islamic world pushing north into a divided continent, dozens of competing powers that won't find unity for another 1,000 years. In the alternate timeline, none of that exists. There are no medieval kingdoms because there was no power vacuum for them to fill. There is no dominant church because Rome never needed Christianity as a unifying political force. The empire itself was that force. There are no Viking raids because the coastlines are Roman and the legions are watching. The Islamic world still rises. Rome cannot prevent a religion from being born. But without a fragmented Europe to expand into, it meets a very different opponent on its northern border. Not squabbling feudal kingdoms, a unified empire with professional legions and 1,000 years of military tradition. The border holds somewhere around modern-day Turkey and Egypt. 2 great powers, one line between them. Rome controls everything north and west. The Islamic world controls everything south and east. And Rome, with its borders secure, turns its attention to the ocean. Roman ships have been pushing west into the Atlantic for generations. An empire that controls all of Europe and much of North Africa eventually runs out of continent, and Rome has always expanded toward the horizon. In the alternate timeline, Roman ships make landfall in the Caribbean around 1200 AD, nearly 3 centuries before Columbus historically. But this is not the story of a lost explorer with 3 ships. Rome arrives with legions. The indigenous civilizations of the Americas, the Maya, the early Aztec, the great cultures of North America, do not encounter a handful of desperate sailors. They encounter the full, organized weight of the world's only superpower. Some resist, some are absorbed, some are destroyed. It is conquest in the Roman tradition. Total, organized, permanent. By 1300 AD, the Roman standard flies over what we would call Mexico City. By 1400 AD, legions are marching north into what we would call the United States. The Americas have a new name: Nova Roma. And so we arrive in the present. Not our present, the alternate timeline's present. Walk through what we would call London, and the streets are Roman. Not in the museum sense, not ruins behind glass, living Roman. 2,000 years of continuous architectural evolution from the same root. Glass and steel and concrete, but columned, ordered, imperial. Public squares at the center of every city. Aqueducts running alongside every major road. Streets laid out in the same precise grid the legions used to build their camps 2,000 years ago. The signs are in Latin. Not because anyone chose to preserve a dead language, because Latin never died. It evolved the way all living languages do. But the root is Latin, and everyone knows it. There is no English, no French, no Spanish, no Italian. Historically, these languages were born from the chaos that followed Rome's fall, a fall that never happened in the alternate timeline. There is an emperor. There has always been an emperor. The office evolved over 2,000 years into something between an elected head of state and a hereditary monarch, but the title remains. The word that once meant military commander now means something closer to what we might call a president, but with more history behind it than any president has ever carried. There is no United States of America. The land exists, the rivers, the mountains, the plains, but it is Nova Roma. A Roman province for 8 centuries. The people who live there are Roman citizens. They have been for generations. They have never heard of George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or the Declaration of Independence. They have their own heroes, their own founding myths, all of them Roman. Historically, there was a World War I and a World War II. The specific conditions that produced those wars, a fragmented Europe of competing nations tearing each other apart, never existed in the alternate timeline. There was one power, one law. There is no United Nations because there is no need for one. There is Rome. Historically, Rome fell 1,500 years ago, but it never really left. The calendar on your wall? Roman. The alphabet you are reading these words in? Roman. The legal concepts that underpin every court in the Western world? Roman. The very months of the year still carry the names of Roman gods and Roman emperors. We live in the echo of Rome. In the alternate timeline, they never stopped living in Rome itself. The empire that never ended, the city that refused to fall. 2,778 years and counting. Historically, tourists visit the Colosseum to see what Rome used to look like. In the alternate timeline, they hold the games there every year. The past, you know, is only one of them.